Can I introduce, please, it's with due humility and everything and all that stuff, this is the best triathlete in the world, Chrissie Wellington. That's 1 minute, Chrissie, the clapping. It's got to be better. I met Chrissie some years ago via her coach at that time, and he said to me, we're up at Salford for one of the World Cup races. Chrissie was racing in the age groups, and he said, Steve, you want to have a look at this girl? She's a bit special. Yeah. Heard it all before. All these age groupers come through, maybe a swimming background, maybe a running background, maybe something, and a coach comes along and says, yeah, she might have something. On this occasion, he was right. Very, very right, because shortly after, she won the age group at Salford by 12 minutes and would have placed, I think, 6th on the pro race of that, with all the advantages of the draft and whatever. And then just a very few months after, won the age group overall at Lausanne, wasn't it, that year, before someone else was coaching. Since then, she's sort of been up and down a bit with a couple of good performances. First at Hawaii, unbeaten at Ironman right the way through. So I love hearing the sound of my voice, but I can already tell by people looking at their watches going, stop now. Let's give it to Chrissie just to give an intro first of all of how she got into it, how she progressed with the racing, and maybe a couple of things that happened just recently.
In terms of how I got into triathlon, I think many of you know my story. I don't think I followed a stereotypical path into the sport. I swam as a kid pretty poorly and was much more interested in the social side than kind of fulfilling any kind of athletic potential. I did focus very heavily on my academic qualifications, and that was what I think I devoted and channeled all my drive and determination into. I went travelling for 2 years after my degree, and then returned to the UK to do my master's. And during that time, I started running, and I did it in a very obsessive but very unstructured and kind of uninformed manner, and just did 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and I was running up to about 90 minutes, and then I had a brain fart, I'll run the London Marathon. So I got a charity place and ran the London Marathon in 2002. So at which point I could swim a bit and I could run. I'd never sat on a road bike. And it was really in 2003 I got hit by a car, and that put paid to any running for a few months. So I started swimming again, and that's was my first kind of realization that opportunity does definitely come out of misfortune, and it's a lesson that I'm remembering right now. So in 2004, a friend suggested that I try triathlon. I did my first sprint down at Eton, the Eton Super Sprint, and never really looked back. I lived in Nepal in 2005, and for a part of 2006. And then when I came back to the UK in 2006, I was really determined just to try and fulfill my potential as a triathlete, as an amateur triathlete. And as Steve said, I did a number of races, one of those being the famous Shropshire Triathlon, which was the start of a very special journey for me. That gave me the ticket to the World Age Group Championships, which were in Lausanne that year. In the meantime, I did the Salford Triathlon, where we met first, and then won the World Age Groups, much to my surprise, in 2006, and became a professional triathlete in early 2007. So this time 3 years ago.
There you go. How about that? Everybody's story, isn't it, right the way through? I think what grabbed everyone so much, Chrissy, was that it was great going to Lausanne to win. We had a couple of age group winners. You won the age group overall that time. And then came the first Hawaii. Yeah. And we knew that you were going to do something. I knew she was going to win. No, I didn't, but I wish I had.
We should put money on it.
But it was exactly that. It was one of those out of the blue, really. John Levison thought you were going to win. And I'll say that for John now. I don't know if he's even in here. But we picked up the papers, the news reports, the internet the next day, and it was Chrissie Wellington, GB athlete, wins Hawaii Ironman. Oh, that really is the biggest. So just that very first one, if you could talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised, as everyone else was, to win Hawaii. I mean, even in 2005, I didn't really know what an Ironman was, and I remember saying to someone that I met that was training for New Zealand Ironman, "You're absolutely mad. You'll never catch me doing one of those, running a marathon after biking all that way. You're crazy." And now I'm as crazy as the rest of them. But I knew my training was going well going into Hawaii. I had a great race at Outdoors, long course triathlon, which is a phenomenal race, and I really enjoyed it. And I think it was then that I realised I had a talent for endurance sports and particularly long course triathlon. Within a few weeks, I was on the start line of Ironman Korea. And then within 6 weeks, I was on the start line at Hawaii. I think my kind of ignorance and naivety was a blessing that year. I really didn't have a full appreciation for the kind of scale, magnitude, importance of the event. I pretty much went into it as blind as a bat and was just determined to give it everything. But in my favor was the fact that I didn't really get nervous, and I didn't defer to anyone. So, when I came across the lead group of girls on the bike, I didn't think to myself, well, that's, Sam McGlone, and there's McKeely Jones, because I didn't know who they were. So I just went past them because I felt that I could go faster. And I really had to pinch myself to believe that I was leading the World Ironman Championships. It was incredibly surreal. But I knew nothing about the talents of the other girls, and I definitely didn't know how I would fare on the marathon relative to them. I was just determined to enjoy it, go out there and give it absolutely everything I had, and to continue to be in the lead and to cross the finish line in first place was, I think the first adjective I'd use was surreal. It did pass in a bit of a haze, and like I said, I really didn't appreciate at that point what I had achieved. Of course, I was incredibly overjoyed, happy, satisfied, relieved, of course. But I think it was only in the months afterwards that it really did strike me that I was World Ironman champion, and that I was flying the flag for Great Britain in Ironman and in triathlon, and that is something I'm incredibly proud to do. But yeah, that first race was a phenomenal experience, but certainly I was surprised as everyone else, and I did hear people whispering, Chrissy who.
Off the back of that victory, Chrissy, you then had a great year right the way through, and you got into the second Hawaii, and second Hawaii was, well, we know who's going to win the women's, it's Chrissie Wellington, and then something happened.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I never take the win for granted, so I definitely didn't go into the race thinking, you're going to win this race, it's fine, it's a done deal, which is what the media, seem to convey. I do every race, I race every race determined to try and win. That's the name of the game for me, and obviously I'm an incredibly fierce competitor, but I don't take that win for granted, and I know that it's going to be a very tough fight, and it's an incredibly long day out there, and like Steve said, anything can happen, and it did, and I got a flat tire at around, it was just before the halfway point, which was at Harvey, and I I remained very calm, and I'm actually very surprised of myself for remaining as calm as I did. And I think I took an incredible amount of confidence in the fact that I'd punctured at 2 races prior to that in Korea and in Alpe d'Huez. And both times I repaired the puncture and then came back to win. So I knew that a race is not over just because you have a flat tire or because you have a problem, and it is definitely how you deal with that. So I didn't panic. I tried to remain as calm as I could. I replaced the inner tube. The first gas canister I didn't apply properly, and the second gas canister didn't work, so I was left without any form of inflation equipment by the side of the road. And as many of you know, fortunately for me, Rebecca Keat handed me her gas canister, which to me kind of epitomizes everything that is amazing about our sport. That my fellow competitor and rival would go out of her way to, even just to reach around, give me her gas canister, and support me on my way to, to what was another victory. And I haven't forgotten that, and I'm incredibly grateful to Beck for doing what she did. But what it does demonstrate is that Ironman is a long day. You're never going to have a perfect race. I still haven't had a perfect race, and nor do I expect one, because you're always going to have ups and you're always going to have downs, and it's how you deal with those, and you can come through it. And it's about having faith in your mind and faith in your body that you can overcome those difficult times and go on to reach your goal. And that was an important lesson for me, and to take that victory after having that flat tire made it incredibly special.
And then, Chris, we came into Hawaii, the third one, and in the whole history of Ironman, both men and women, there's always been one or maybe 2 people at the top, and I'm thinking Dave Scott and Mark Allen, I'm thinking Erin Baker, Pauline Newby-Fraser, the 1 or the 2 who are always that much ahead of everybody else. My perception is you've come into the sport and gone straight there, but I thought last year, the last race, there were people who were thinking as you thought, you know what, it may be Chrissie Wellington, but I can get her. And it seems to me at the top now, with the women particularly, that the competition and the level of that competition is probably the best in depth that it ever has been. Which leads on to talking about that, but also who you see as your main rivals. You mentioned Becky, and I know there's another couple there.
Yeah, I mean, last season was incredible for me. I really had a great year, and I'm really happy with how everything went, from the world record in Roth to defending Hawaii for the 3rd time, and breaking the course record there. Like I said, I don't take the win for granted, and as you said, Steve, the strength and depth of the women's pro field is phenomenal now, and it's really great to see. There's as many women in this room as there are men, and that's what's great about this sport, that it really is open to all. And I hope that myself and some of the other professional women are offering up role models that can make you believe that you too can do what we do, and push yourself to the limit and reach for the stars. In terms of who my main competitors are, there are so many, and I'm sure I'm going to think back in a couple of minutes' time and think, oh, I wish I'd mentioned that name. There'll be people I'll forget to mention, but of course, Beck Keat is incredibly strong, and under my old coach Brett Sutton is getting even stronger, and she's a force to be reckoned with. Of course, Mirinda in her first race to come second, and 2:56 marathon is absolutely phenomenal, and she's definitely going to be a threat in Hawaii this year. Julie Dibbons is hopefully going to step up and do an Ironman. We'll do Kona this year, and I definitely hope she gives me a really good run, run for my money. Katrina Morrison didn't have the race she wanted in Hawaii due to sickness, but she showed in Roth in her first Ironman how talented she is across all distances, and she's really as hard as nails, and I've got a lot of respect for her. There are many others, but I am so incredibly happy that there are women that are chasing me down, because it forces me to raise my game. I know now that 2:57 for a marathon is not fast enough, so I'm striving for more, and I'm trying to raise my own bar to meet others. So that's going to help me get stronger and faster, and I know for sure that I can. So I mean, that's what's exciting for me. I don't think you've seen the best of me yet.
Okay. You talked about Rebecca Keats, Australian athlete. Maybe to talk, Chrissy, about the contrast. I remember Rebecca as a 16-year-old racing the Worlds on the Aussie junior team. She's been a pro for half her life, and your introduction to triathlon is very, very different from that, from coming in as an old age pensioner and getting these extra days. How important is it to have had Becky's background, or how unimportant it is compared to what you've done as you've come in?
I think there are many different things that shape you as an athlete, and experience in the sport is one, but I don't think it's the be all and end all. And I think there's been so many different experiences in my life, sporting and non-sporting, that have shaped me into the athlete that I am today. And I wouldn't have changed things for the world. I really treasure the fact that I took my education seriously. I have a degree. I worked for the government for 4 years. I lived and worked in Nepal. All of those different experiences have helped, have really helped shape me. And I also think that Ironman in particular, physical strength or mental strength is just as important as physical strength. And that mental strength can come from a lot of different experiences, not just through, not just through training. And I think that, I hope that my mental strength is, is something, I know that my mental strength is something that I haven't just developed through being in triathlon.
Can we progress on that? Because the sentence you said a couple of minutes ago was, I hope I don't misquote, I know now that a 2:57 marathon isn't fast enough. Interesting. I think it was Paavo Nurmi, and your knowledge of old age athletics is much better than mine, but I think it was Nurmi who said, my muscles are like rubber, so they don't really matter when I'm racing, but the mind can be strong. And you've alluded to the mental attitude and the mental strength. To me, it's everything. Absolutely everything. If you can go perhaps a little bit more on that.
Yeah, you need an incredible amount of mental fortitude, I think, to be successful at the Ironman distance, because there are dark times that you need to be able to get through, and the power of the mind can do a lot to overcome the body in those particular times. I have a huge amount of faith in my body to carry me through a race. I really, truly believe in my heart that I will finish the race. I really don't feel that my body is ever gonna give out on me. And I really think that inner faith and inner self-belief really does count for a lot. But the other thing to do, to remember is you have to like to hurt. And I think some people don't like to hurt, and I do. And it's really important to me in training that I push my body to its limit and beyond, because that's how it feels when you race. It isn't always comfortable, and you have to know and be confident enough to be able to deal with that pain and that discomfort. in training and then in racing, because it does give you peace of mind when you race, to know that you've overcome that pain before and endured it and come out the other side. But of course there are techniques that I use. My mind is not vacant when I race. There are very specific images that I have and tools and techniques that I use to enable me to overcome especially the more difficult times, whether it be through music, through rhythmic counting, visualization techniques, etc. And I think everyone would benefit from practicing those in training, so that during a race you can really draw upon them to give you the strength that you need.
I love that, Chrissy. We were talking earlier in here with a lot of new triathletes, and we said maybe the top two rules in triathlon are, number one, how much do you want it? And number two, how much can you hurt? And I think what you said there is exactly that. Whatever level, that's what we're coming through on. If you can continue maybe a little bit on the mental attitude side, because your first Ironman coach, Brett Sutton, who's a really contentious figure, there's no secrets about that, but he's had more world champions than the rest of us put together, times 10. He really has. And the experience of being on training camps with Brett, the whole lifestyle, which I know very little about, but I found it absolutely mind-blowing, just watch his interrelationship with the athletes. And you were there 24 hours a day. So just a day in the life of, something like that.
Yeah, Brett Sutton was my first ever coach, and I remember within 3 days of meeting him, he said, physically you have what it takes to be a professional athlete, but mentally I think I'm going to have to chop your head off. And by that he meant that, he could read me like a book, and that's I think Brett's talent and skill that many people do not have. He can really read people, and he knew me inside out within a few days of meeting me, which was actually quite scary. But he knew that I stressed about things, I pondered things, I questioned things, I was very impatient. And he said all of those kind of characteristics and temperaments would be your undoing unless you could control them. And this is about me maturing as an athlete, not just maturing physically, but maturing mentally, because I've had to learn to control my impatience. I've had to learn to, in his words, hurry slowly, not to stress and worry if a training session doesn't go according to plan. I'm reminded of his words when he said, some sessions are stars and some sessions are stones, but they're all rocks and we build with them, and that's so true. You do a session, you bank it, it might be good, it might be bad, but you do it and you move on. And I owe a tremendous amount to Brett. I'm under no illusions. Without him and his self-belief, in his belief in me, I would never have been on that start line at Ironman Hawaii. I'd only been a professional for about 8 months at that point. And I think that the normal course of events would have been to do a half Ironman, and then maybe the next year try your full Ironman, then maybe the next year go to Hawaii. But he believed in me, and he saw something in me that I probably didn't even see in myself. So I give him a lot of credit for a tremendous amount of credit for shaping me into the athlete that I am, and for getting me on that start line in Kona that first year. In terms of his training camp, there's a lot of mystique that surrounds his training methods. What I have to say about Brett is that he tailors every program to suit the individual, and that's incredibly important. There's not one blueprint that Brett uses. So what other athletes, Belinda, Hillary, Bella, were doing wasn't applicable to me. So while they were out doing marathons every other weekend, I wasn't, because that doesn't suit me, and it doesn't suit my body shape, or even my mental approach to things. So Brett did tailor everything very much to the individual. I like to say that we as professionals, we train 24/7. And I've said this in a number of different interviews, it's not just about when we're exercising. People say, oh, how many hours do you do a day? Well, I'm like, well, I do 24 hours a day, because everything I do in my life is devoted towards my ultimate goal. It's about being the best athlete that I can be. And that's just not that's not just the training. It's the resting, it's the nutrition, which is incredibly important. It's the recovery, it's the sleep. And all of that is training your body and mind to be the best athlete that I can be. But in terms of hours that we do, anything between about 3.5 to 6 hours a day, 6 sessions of each a week. I don't have a day off each week, and there's a reason for that. It's because between sessions, I have we professionals have a luxury that the majority of amateurs don't, in that we can rest between sessions. We do a session and then we can sit there. 2 hours, then we can go and do another session. You guys are juggling work, family, social life. You don't get that luxury, so I'd be minded to suggest that you incorporate a rest day once every week, every 10 days into your training. I train hard. I train really hard, but I don't probably do the hours that you might think I do. I mean, you've heard this said many times, but I don't emphasize quantity over quality. Quality is incredibly important to me. I don't do a lot of junk miles. Brett taught me that. My longest run was 2 hours, 2.25 a push. My longest ride, I'd maybe do 1 6-hour ride a year. The rest are around 4.5, 4:45 at the longest. But within those, I work hard. I don't go out for a 4-hour, cruisy, steady ride. Within that, I've got an 1.5-hour time trial and 3 20-minute hard efforts. So it's quality rather than quantity, and that's something that Brett always taught me. But no, I don't make any bones about it. I work hard and I rest hard and I fuel my body so that I can be the best in the world.
Coming away from Brett, Chrissy, I know you don't want to talk about coaches that you went to then, it certainly wouldn't be fair of me to ask you. But the situation you're in now, my understanding is you're pretty much self-coached, but you will listen to people who you think have something to contribute.
Yeah, I have been self-coached since the middle of last year. It's working really well. I think I really enjoyed being under Brett. It was a very authoritarian structure. It was kind of like an army-soldier relationship whereby he'd give me the order and I'd execute it, no questions asked. And if I'm not under that kind of structure, I think I need to take total control. And that's why I decided to be self-coached. And although we race as individuals, like you said, we're definitely not racing alone, and I've got a small, close-knit support network behind me. There's a couple of people that I do speak to. Dave Scott is pivotal to that, particularly in terms of my swim training. He's based out in Boulder, as I was last year, and I really give him a lot of credit for improving my swim time. I knocked 2 minutes off my Hawaii swim split this year, and a lot of that is down to him. So you probably want to stay here and get some top tips from him after I finished rambling on. But yeah, so Dave has been instrumental in improving my swim and definitely some kind of strength and conditioning as well, which I was lacking before. I draw heavily on my program with Brett, and I've become increasingly capable of listening to my own body and knowing what training suits me and developing a program around that. It's not always easy, but I think it's teaching me a lot about, about myself, and particularly, kind of this personal intuition, and really, listening to yourself, and making sure that you do what's best for you in every single session that you do.
Just a couple more, Chris, and then I think we'll throw it over to the floor because they're fed up with me. Lots of rumours about 2012. Lots and lots of rumours. Yeah?
Yeah. For me, Hawaii is my Olympics. It's where the very, very best in the world, in my sport, which is Ironman, come together. And for me, I have 3 Olympic gold medals, and I'm so incredibly proud of those. Of course, the Olympics is the biggest sporting stage, and I'll be a fool to say that I wouldn't be interested in competing for Great Britain, particularly in London at 2012. Unfortunately, Ironman isn't there, and I gave up gymnastics at about the age of 5. Maybe lawn bowls. No, in all seriousness, I would never close the door to the possibility. I'm a go-getter, and I love taking chances. But for me, Hawaii and Ironman is what I want to focus on. And I will do a couple of time trial bike races this year to see how good or otherwise I am at them. But definitely Hawaii 2010 and 2011 is where I want to set my sights.
Wow. And last question, then we'll throw them over. After 2012, I mean, you're a ledge. You fill a hall. You can fill a hall literally anywhere in the world. People will come. Where do you go? Hate to say it, but when it's all over, because it's never all over. But you'll be doing other stuff.
I've been afforded an amazing opportunity. I have to pinch myself each and every day to believe that I'm Ironman world champion. I never in a million years would have expected to have been sitting up here, and I feel incredibly strongly that as a professional sports person, I have a responsibility that goes so much wider than swim, bike and run and raising the GB flag at the finish line. So much wider. And I never want to forget that, and I will take every opportunity that I can to inspire and encourage as many people that I can possibly inspire and encourage to take up this this amazing sport, and make them realise that they too can do what they may not have thought possible, because I didn't think Ironman was possible for me until I gave it a go. And I think it would be a lesson, to us all to take that chance, take that risk, and believe in ourselves. In terms of what I want to do afterwards, I want to combine my two passions. My two passions are sport and development, and I can bring them both together because I have that platform now. And I'm so grateful for that platform. Yes, triathlon is not a majority sport in terms of media coverage yet, but it's a majority sport in terms of participation. And I truly believe that I have a responsibility to be the role model and ambassador for our sport that you would want to see. And in the future, like I said, I want to do my bit to combine sport and development, set up my own foundation to get more kids, particularly underprivileged kids, involved in sport and involved in triathlon particularly. I want to do a lot more bonkers endurance adventure races because they really appeal to me, multi-day endurance challenges, kind of James Cracknell-esque. So that's something that I'm really excited about doing. A lot more traveling, spending time with my family because I don't get to see them as much as I want to. But definitely using the platform that I have to do whatever I can to put triathlon on the map in the UK and overseas.
Wow. I think the quote is ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Chrissy, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, questions from the floor. If you'd like to put your hands up, we've got a couple of roving mics, and there we go.
Hi, Chrissy.
Hi.
Any plans to race in the UK?
This year, probably not. I wouldn't say categorically no, but unlikely.
Would you consider doing the Western State 100-mile endurance run?
The question was, just people who couldn't hear, the question was, would you consider doing the Western State 100-mile endurance run?
Probably not next week. My fitness is somewhat lacking due to the cast on my arm. I'd never say never to anything. And I've never run more than 26 miles. And it would present me with an amazing challenge. I wouldn't say I'd do that specific race, but I'd definitely look to be doing some longer distance endurance challenges.
So a mixture of swimming and bike? Or?
It can be a mixture of all sports, kayaking, orienteering, rafting, cycling, running, you name it, I'll try it. Just not gymnastics.
I've spoken with a couple of people that sort of trained with you in the past and stuff, and the big thing that they've come across to me is obviously not just your physical ability, but also it's your ability to recover quickly that impressed them. So I was just wondering, obviously appreciating that physiologically that's the main makeup, but is there anything else that you do to help recover and get back to where you need to be that much quicker?
Yeah, I seem to be able to back up quite intensive training and races and bounce back, relatively quickly. But of course, the training sessions that I do afterwards, after, say, for example, a race, are very, very important. Nutrition is the key to recovery. Really, really fueling my body, making sure that I get the right mix of fats and carbohydrates and proteins. That's incredibly important. Massage is also important for recovery, and rest and sleep. It's it's a combination of different different things.
Next question, please. James, you've got one at the back.
Hi, Chrissy. Glenn McFarlane here. You're an inspiration to us all. Thank you. I struggle on the run with motivation, especially when I'm past at speed. And it tends to crush you mentally. You suggested that you had some games or some tricks of the mind. Do you think you could share those with us when you're in those dark moments?
Yeah, first of all, like I said before, you need to push yourself that little bit further in training, so that when it comes to the race, you've already endured that level of pain and discomfort, in training. That's not to say you have to go out and run a marathon every weekend. I don't do that, but particularly in terms of speed, you need to incorporate some speed work, so you really feel you really know what pain feels like. I have some really positive images in my head, particularly of, it sounds like a bit of an oxymoron, but of times that have been difficult that I've overcome. So, whether that be cycling across the Himalayas at 5,000 meters in sandstorms and snowstorms, and overcoming that, and knowing that my body can endure it, really does give me an incredible amount of confidence and self-belief. So I have those, those images in my head. Before a race, I download certain songs onto my iPod, and I bike and I run part or all of the course with my iPod in my ear. And that way when I'm racing and I go past those points that I've heard those songs in training, I remember them, and it gives me a lift. So that's just one, kind of technique or a tool that I use to almost give me something to think about while I'm on the run. I definitely have those songs in my head. I really draw quite heavily on the support from the crowds. Some athletes race as if in a vacuum. I don't, and I really thrive on the support that you get from all the spectators, and that gives me the energy that I need. So, definitely use the spectators and use their energy and their support to help get you through those dark times. But I'm often asked, and I might be asked later, do you use a heart rate monitor? Do you use a power tap thing? And I don't, and that's because I intrinsically know in my heart what pace I can sustain. So I get on that bike, I get on that run, and I run at the pace that I know that I can sustain for 9 hours, and I can just feel it. And you've got to run at the pace that you know that you can sustain for X amount of time, and you can only do that by training your body. So if you get passed by someone that's faster than you, don't be tempted to go with them. Have faith in yourself and in your body and in your mind, and feel that pace, know that pace, and carry on at the pace that you know that you can sustain.
Hi, Chrissy.
Sorry to ask this question, but could I ask your opinion on Lance Armstrong having a go at Kona, and do you actually think he will factor getting in the top 10 like he thinks he can? Let alone against the women.
I am so excited that Lance is supposedly going to do Kona. I don't think he's going to do it this year, but apparently, the sources that I've spoken to say that he's definitely targeting it for next year. I think it's going to be fantastic, and I can't wait to race him. And I'll be that speedy person that goes past. No. I think it's going to be fantastic for the sport. High-profile athletes like him racing Ironman is going to draw a lot more attention, media attention, sponsor attention to the sport, and that can only be good for the professionals all the way down, to the grassroots. So I'm excited about the fact that he's gonna come and he's gonna shine a spotlight on the race and on Hawaii. Lance, as many of you know, was a triathlete. He grew up as a triathlete from his early teens. He was a swimmer, and he has a talent for all three sports. He's shown that he has the endurance. So I have absolutely no doubt that he'll be a force to be reckoned with. Do I think he has what it takes to get in the top 10? Yeah, given the right coaching, definitely. But I think he'll need to sacrifice some of his bike training for obviously training and particularly run training, because right now to get on the podium at Hawaii, you need to be running in mid 240s. So if he can do that, then he's definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with. But I'm excited about the fact that he's going to race. It might take a bit of the pressure off. The media will be focused on him.
Any more questions, please?
Gentleman over there. It's all right. Sorry, we'll be with you in a moment. Hiya.
How far before a race do you decide on a fueling strategy, and when do you implement the fueling strategy that you decide upon in training for the race?
I've followed the same strategy now for the last 2 years. So I stick with a tried and tested method. Race week, I cut out caffeine 7 days before the race. Ordinarily, I have about a cup or two of coffee a day, but I cut caffeine out, and then I get a big hit on race day from a cup of coffee in the morning, and then caffeinated gels. I cut out fibre. Ordinarily, a very high fibre diet, but I cut out fibre 3 days before the race and eat a lot more refined carbohydrates, particularly more white pasta, white rice, white bread, which I wouldn't ordinarily eat that much of, just to try and stick to more bland foods and really reduce the risk of kind of GI distress. Race morning, I have a bowl of porridge it's cream of rice, which you can buy. It looks a bit like gruel or baby cereal. It's really delicious. With honey and peanut butter. And then I don't eat anything before. I have that about 2¼ hours before race start. Then I don't eat anything. I just sip on water. During the race itself, I have Cytomax, 2 bottles of Cytomax, which I make up the night before, one here and one at the X Lab behind. And I have one chocolate bar and 2 gels on the bike. So there's about 750 calories in the 2 bottles. Actually a bit less, and then chocolate bar and 2 gels. And then on the run, I have 1 gel every 25 minutes. I'd have it just before the aid station, and then I'll sip water. I might have a sip of Coke at about 35k, just for the bubbles and the different the different taste. I try and take on 1 gram of carbs per kilo of body weight. So I hover around 60 kilos. So 60 grams of carbs an hour is what I try and take on. That's the general formula in it, and it seems to work for me. It's a trial and error. I've suffered GI problems on the run, and it's still a little bit work in progress, but I think I've found a method that works for me and definitely ensures that I have enough calories. Of course, I drink water throughout the race. I have the bottle on the front, which I don't full to the brim because it changes the weight of the bike, so I only ever have an inch or 2 at the front. But that's really important that I sip water periodically, and also splash it on my face and on my head when the race is hot.
One more question, I think, ladies and gentlemen. One more. James, just behind you. Behind you. He's behind you.
Hi, Chrissy. What's your toughest and most grueling training session consist of?
Under Brett, we used to do 21/800s with it's on the track run, 21/800s with a 200 jog in between. So that was a continuous 21k on the track, followed by a 16-kilometer hill climb of 1,000 meters. The ascent was 1,000 meters. It took about an hour to do. So that was relatively grueling. I have to say that some of my toughest days came when I was in Nepal. When I lived in Nepal, we used to take the mountain bikes and go off road and just bike for about 10 hours until we ended up in someone's house and pleaded with them to let us stay there and feed us rice and lentils. And I think some of those days were tougher than anything I've had to endure. Oh, the other bad one. Oh, under Brett, we had to do 100 hundreds in the swimming pool. And that was for someone's birthday. Brett asked Hilary Biscay what she wanted for her birthday. And Hilary's a masochist, just like me. And she said, I'll do 100 hundreds in the pool, but only if you get the other girls to do it with me. So we had to do 100 hundreds. And that was a test of mental strength. I've never forgiven her for that.